Hello, everyone. So please welcome Anoop Mehta today. So he's the immediate past chairman of the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, and he is also the immediate past chairman of Association of International Certified Professional Accountants. So, like I said, he's the first person of Indian origin to chair the AICPA and only the second minority in its 135-year history. Right. So this is quite incredible. So you have served in several volunteer roles for AICPA, SEMA, AICPA Board of Directors, Association Board of Directors, AICPA Business and Industry Executive Committee, and AICPA Political Action Committee, and AICPA Council. So currently is the Chief Strategist for Analytical Mechanical Associates. So welcome, Anup. It's amazing to have you on our podcast today.
Thank you very much, Ripal. It is absolutely a delight for me to be here with you.
This is a quite extensive career, Anup. And for the students first, we want to understand that why did you select this field and why you opted for CPA qualification?
I have to go back to my father. He was a chartered accountant. He practiced mostly taxation in India. His career, the profession, took him to Africa and then brought him here to the United States. My father's interaction with his clients and how his clients trusted him and wanted his advice on things. And I kind of enjoyed that, seeing him work and seeing the passion that he displayed. So I knew growing up early on that that's the profession I wanted to go into. What I studied in college, that's here I am.
So, Anup, why not chartered accountant? Why CPA?
We moved here to the United States. In the United States, accounting and then the CPA is the designation. My interest went towards getting my CPA license. But I can tell you it wasn't easy. Even though I knew that I was going to become a CPA, it was a hard feat for me to overcome in terms of the exam. I took it several times and didn't pass, and I actually gave it up for a few years, thinking that I was never going to be able to do this. From encouragement from a lot of people, including my dad and my wife, I went back and studied for it and sat for it again, ultimately passed it. So CPA was always on my radar, but after several tries in the beginning, not successfully passing it, I wasn't sure that was really in my cards, but thanks to perseverance and making sure that I went back and studied, I was able to accomplish it.
What CPA means for you as a qualification?
I think the CPA, the letters behind your name, so much significance. It shows to the public that, you've attained those, going through some rigorous education, gotten that experience. You passed a very tough exam, but passable exam. And then you hold ethics and you have integrity. All of those things, I think, is critical to being a CPA. And when I think about a CPA, that's what the public sees, that you have those things in you and they can trust you. You're their trusted advisor. And that's what CPA means to me. And I think what the public sees in us.
There's so much criticism on CPA eligibility as such that there's a lot of talks in the US about 150, 120 credits. So, what is your personal view on this, Anu? Because CPA requires a 4-year bachelor's to be eligible now to write for the exam. Yes, in India, we do have our bridge courses and make them eligible. But still, it does require 120 to sit for the exam and 150 to get the license.
Right.
So, what is your view? Are we actually bringing down, like we saw in Minnesota, that they were trying to pass that if we can kind of reduce from 150 to 120? But do you think that would that impact the quality, or what is the rationale behind when AICPA or NASBA kind of puts up those rules of 150 credits? What is your view on this?
We are a learner profession, and we are a profession. I mean, if you think about law, medicine, all of these, you have a lot more requirements. Law school, you have 3 years, right? Medical school, 4 years, and then additional years for specialties. So we are a learner profession. Having said that, we're also complexity of our profession is increasing. Technology is increasing, and the use of technology in our profession is increasing. So how do you, when a student comes out, how do we make sure that they're prepared to take on the role, or do the things that they need to do? So I think the requirements are there. Now, I am open, personally, I'm open to seeing how we can get to the 150. So I am open to finding other solutions and other pathways. But I think the 150 is critical. And let's face it, right now, I think we're the only profession, the only license that you can go from state A to state B and not having to register. And we have that mobility in that 150. So I'm, like I said, I think there are different courses. The additional requirements that you need can be evolving. As you know, last couple of years, AI, data analytics, all of those things have become so critical. I think the students need to understand that, and that additional 30 hours, whether you take it in coursework or find another solution to it, I think it's important.
And we did have a discussion, Anup, like we work with all the big fours today in India. And I remember you with one of the big four, we did had that discussion where Anup, we mentioned about like in India, we have members in practice and members in service. So now this 150 rule, should it apply to people who are not practicing CPAs? Like we see so many people have passed CPA and they don't practice, they don't have their own firm. And you gave a very fantastic logic that time. So would you want to share your views on why that AICPA doesn't differentiate between people in service and people in practice?
I've spent my entire career in private industry. I have not stepped foot in a firm in public accounting. But the CPA is how public looks at me. They don't differentiate me just because I'm in public accounting or as opposed to private industry. They look at me as a CPA, and that's the critical part. And I don't think you want to create these layers, or I think it confuses the public if you say, well, CPA, but they're in public accounting, or CPA that's in private industry. I think it will confuse the general public. And after all, our license at the CPA is about public interest and protecting the public's interest, right? So I don't think you want to create that confusion in the marketplace. So I think for me, just because I'm in private industry doesn't mean that I don't need to do this or I don't need to do this. I still hold myself out as a CPA. So what does it take for me to continue to uphold that license? Rigorous, take my CP credits, continue to learn new things, continue to, how do I best service my organization? Instead of clients, I have organization that I need to best serve, right? So what are the training I need to make sure that I am doing the best for my organization, right? So I think irrespective of whether you're private or public, that the requirement to be a CPA should be the same.
Awesome, Anup. The shortages of accountants in the US, we are seeing so many people leaving the accounting field, and the reasons are quite popular. Is definitely there is a huge workload. They say AICPA, but I think the major reason have been from the firm side. I think Generation Z wants everything fast, want a quick growth, quick career, and we see that many of them leaving the profession because they find accounting quite boring. And this is one of the things which I have not believed into, but this is something which I have got to know recently, that they feel that this is quite repetitive in nature. Second is many of them are getting retired now, as you see the aging population. And with the younger generation, don't want to opt accounting because they see that the pay is less, the work is repetitive. So, what is AICPA doing before Anup, I share, I mean, I ask your personal views also, but because you have been in the board, you have been actively even in the Maryland Association, you have been there with universities as well. So, what are the things we are doing to recreate that magic CPA had? And now it's kind of going in that downward curve. So, what is that we are taking? What are those active steps which we are taking to kind of fix this problem?
First of all, SRipal, I have to say, I love your enthusiasm. I mean, because I've met you several times. How excited you are about the profession. And I think that's one of the key, right? Is showing excitement and showing that what this profession has to offer. So I think AICPA is doing a lot of different things. We have actually last April, the board of directors, which is April 2023, board of directors adopted a resolution and formed this independent committee called the National Pipeline Advisory Group. What their whole sole purpose was to come up with and address the issues about the pipeline shortages and things like that, right? So they're working on one of the things you mentioned is, that excitement part, right? They look at the field as boring. Well, you know what? I will tell you, if I ask my kids, what do you think of accounting? They'll tell the same thing. Yeah, it's boring. How do we tell our story? How do we tell us all the exciting things? So for me personally, I work with rocket scientists. I'm a CPA, but I work with rocket scientists. That's exciting. So I think one of the things we have to do is show that, tell that story. Second, I do think firms have to adapt and they have to change. They have to address salaries. They have to address the work-life balance. And we are coming up with the resources, and we are having those conversations with major firms and firms that are, below the major firms to showcase that, hey, listen, today's workforce works differently than probably somebody that's been in the field for, 20 years or 30 years, right? So that's part of it. One of the other things, we have to get back into high schools and colleges and show the students what are the opportunities that are available in this profession, right? And it's not just tax, because I'll tell you, when I talk to people, when I tell them I'm a CPA, automatically they assume I do taxes or I do an audit, right? We got to change that narrative. And how do we tell that story? Is to show up in these schools and tell the students that all the possibilities that exist, things like, that you could be a CEO. I was president of a aerospace company, but my background is CPA, and that's what enabled me to do the things that I've been able to do. So you got to change that narrative. There's so many different things that, look, we haven't gotten here just in the last couple of years. You've seen the slight decline over the last 10, and we're not going to be able to solve this in the next year or 2 years. We're going to have to, it's going to take some time. But I think we are changing the time. I think the times are changing. And as I've visited, and I think visited over 40 some campuses, and I've talked to over 11,500 students. I will tell you, they are excited about our profession and eager to enter our profession. So I think all those things collectively, there's like 13, 14 different initiatives that AICPA is looking at, the impact is looking at in addressing that. But my view, the best way, I think, which it's been, like I said, what I've done in the last year and a half, 2 years, is go talk to students and tell them our stories about why I do what I do. And I think that is one of the most impactful moments you can for a student and make the most impact that students can have in understanding what the professions.
One very good point which you mentioned was definitely that AICP is kind of going to the schools, creating the awareness. Especially, I've seen you visiting so many universities and talking about the CPA as a qualification is so significant. Right? It also creates an entrepreneurship side because you can open your own firm as well.
Exactly.
You are not just for meant for jobs, right? You can yourself create or open your own firm and employ people. And one good thing which you were mentioning, that CPAs just not tax people. So they have life beyond accounting and tax, because they think the moment they see CPA, and today we see CPAs, the current generation CPAs which are coming up, so they are becoming more digital marketing also, because that is what clients is expecting them to be business partners more than just recording the journal entries and all. So they are no longer the accountants, they are more of an analyst. I think that is one very, very good point, Anup, which you have mentioned is, so we are not just accountants, we are actually the future analyst, I would say, or who are designing the future of the profession. But one criticism again, Anup, we see is that most of the job opportunities are in audit or are in tax. And that's where the narrative kind of goes, is that CPAs are only kind of, they get jobs only in audit and tax. So Why are they not getting jobs in transaction taxes, mergers, acquisitions, or business partnering, FP&A? So what are we doing in that directions that our students also? So are we also planning up with some placement drives or something like that? Is there something where we are also talking about the profiles, because the entire thing is coming because of the interest, of the lack of interest in the profession, and that interest
Yeah.
can be developed only when we have good profiles which are not repetitive and which are very analytical in nature. So are what are some of the things which we are doing to kind of reiterate to the firms that you can just can't have these repetitive profiles for you, for our people?
Well, I think first, the comment you made about, looking at the future, right? And I think we as professionals, CPAs, whether you're in public accounting or you're in private industry, we are looked upon as strategic advisors, right? To whether our clients or to the organizations we support. So we're not no longer looked upon, or we shouldn't be looked upon as recorders of transaction, but how do we get from here to the future? Strategic advisor, right? And that's kind of what I've done in my organization, leading the organization, growing the organization, right? So that's one clarification I want to make sure I get. But I think it's, if you look at the firms that are growing the fastest, the area that they're growing most in is what they call client advisory or client accounting services, which is those outsourced services, outsourced CFOs, outsourced controllers. Um, you're seeing an increase in supporting cyber security, SOC 1 reporting, SOC 2 reporting. I think you're seeing most of the largest increase in firms is coming in those areas, not necessarily tax and now, that doesn't mean there's no place at. I mean, there's still interest. People still, I mean, the students that I talk to, they're still interested. There are some that want to do tax, and I think that's great. There are some that want to do audit. I think that's great. But you're also seeing a huge increase in those client advisory services. One of the things that's interesting in our profession, typically, if you go back several decades, the transition was that you work in public accounting for a few years, you get your experience, and then you go into the
Industry.
you're right. You go into the corporate world as controller, VP of finance, CFO. Interestingly enough, in the last few years, you've seen a trend the other way, meaning now you got public accounting individuals that are going back in, excuse me, from corporate world, they're going back into public accounting because now you get to do the CFO role, but you may get to do the CFO role for so many different clients, right? And again, outsourcing of CFOs and controller position. So I think the profession gives you the ability to pivot as your interests are pivoting, as the market is pivoting. And I think that's what's wonderful about this profession, that you're always going to be needed. You're always going to be relevant. Today, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, right? So I think there are tons and tons of different opportunities, like you just said. The today's in today's environment, as I've talked to the students, one of the big things that they've always talked about is entrepreneurship. They want to own their business. Well, being a CPA, you can start your own practice, as you said, right? You can become a partner in a firm, or you can do another business but run it successfully because you're a CPA. And again, I'm a perfect example. I started with this small company, aerospace company, and I, would help grow that company. And then ultimately, I became president and CEO of that company. And I was running a company, but I was able to do that because of all the knowledge that I've gained as a CPA, all the training, all the resources that were available to me as a CPA that allowed me to do that. So that was my interest, but the CPA profession allowed me to follow that. So there are so many things that you mentioned, data analytics. Absolutely. That helps us project for the future, right? It's not about just reporting the past, but it's going into the future. How do we use the data? How do we use AI to improve efficiency? So, yeah, to improve efficiency for our client, or if you're in an organization, how do we use AI to increase efficiencies within our organization? So the possibilities are endless. So that's what really, if you can't tell how excited about the profession, this is why I'm
And
so
that kind
excited
of
about it.
resonates also, Anup, with the CPA 2024, which is actually is a big hit. The new content, everyone is liking
Yeah.
it. It is more specialized than generalized. Previously, people were not aware which career they must select, which profile they must go into. And one question is, which discipline you would have taken, Anup, had you enrolled in CPA 2024 program? Because PAR, Reg, Audit is mandatory. So in disciplines, what would Anup would have selected? Would it be ISC, would it be TCP, or would it be BAR?
I think I would have taken on technology, the information.
Awesome. So I
Yeah.
think that is where, guys, the answer is like, because there's so much of technology which we are talking about. So I think information system and controls, the
Yeah.
cyber security, the IT security, I think the compliance, SOC 1, SOC 2, we're getting a lot of GDPR things. So to students who are watching us, Anup's favorite is ISC in the discipline information system and controls. And to be honest, Anup, I've been advocating the students also for the similar practice, and we have been focusing a lot at Simandhar that we push a lot of students for ISC, because I feel information system and control is the future. Unless and until they are already working with US tax, then TCP becomes a kind of alternative for them, or I would say extension of tax, because they're already working in US tax.
Yeah,
Nevertheless,
but
yeah,
clearly, one of the things that you have to make sure that I think your audience and the students understand, just because you did an information system doesn't mean that you can't do tax in the future, or you can't do. You're still a CPA, and that's the other point that you were making earlier about designation CPA versus your public accounting and private industry. That's why you don't want to designate. CPA is a CPA is a CPA. Doesn't matter what. Okay, and the ethics, the integrity that we built as part of being a CPA will require you to study up on if you choose to go into tax in the future. Let's say you do information systems, right? You want to do tax later, but our integrity, all of those things allow us to make sure that we are going to be educated well enough to be able to do in the tax in the future or do an audit in the future, right? But that's required. That's a must. So I think I would go, like I said, that this is what I would be interested in seeing what it is. But we have one topic you haven't touched on, which is one of my favorite, is ESG, environmental, social, and governance. That I tell you, that is another booming area that CPA profession is going to be making a lot of movement in. A lot of this today's generation requires that kind of data on public statements and corporate statements. Who better to deliver and provide that kind of information than the CPA, right? So ESG is another environment, as you know, that the company I work for does nothing but works in the environmental sciences. So I'm very passionate about ESG and what it means to work in that space. So that's another one of the things that I hear from students why they're fascinated or why they're interested in going and doing CPA is to be able to work in this space, ESG space.
I think that's a very, very good answer for skill sets required in future. Right, Anup?
Yeah.
So ESG, AI, data analytics, cyber security, IT audit, IT controls. I think these are the emerging areas. SOC 1, SOC 2. I think these are some of the emerging skill set which you're seeing the new generation of CPAs, the new jobs which will be created for CPAs beyond, or I would say, audit or tax. I think this is something everyone should watch out for, is the profession is kind of transforming substantially. Anup, what is your views on Indian market? I know, and I think this is the last question of our series. We are seeing STEM coming up, and we are seeing that many of the Indian students, and we have tied up with a lot of these universities like University of Missouri, Columbia, which is Mizo. Ken Bishop is an alumni of Mizo. And we
Yeah.
have tied up with all these universities like University of Washington, Tacoma and all, So I think we have also visited some of the universities, if you see lately, and many students are seeing that excitement to move to the US under the STEM route because they get a 3-year OPT. But as you know, Anup, that there is no guarantees for the job and all, and we need to be very transparent that that is one of the biggest disadvantage of this model is that the job market is not so good when we see that. But yes, there is definitely a kind of that hope that they can do the masters in the US now with the STEM. They get a 3-year OPT. So do you think this is good step, and shall the Indian students also take on this step, or do you think that they should take some experience in India before moving into this segment?
I think accounting being designated in STEM is natural, and we just talked so much about technology and that in that T part, right? In this STEM, the T part. U.S. has been AICPA has been a big advocate getting accounting under the STEM designation. We have been working with the U.S. Congress to do that. It has been slow, but we do know that we have bipartisan support for it. Having said that, I also know many of the universities are taking upon themselves to have their curriculum that be designated STEM, and they've been successful. And in my travels and visiting many of these campuses, including the University of Missouri, I know that there are a lot of students that are coming in from abroad to study accounting, and part of their attraction is that if it's STEM designated, they're able to stay here for 3 additional years in the field, right? U.S. does have a shortage of accountants right now. So this is a great opportunity for people from India and others to come and perhaps pursue those master's degree in accounting, do the degree in accounting, and potentially be able to work here for those 3 additional years. Now, beyond that, I understand there's no gap. But I think if this continues, meaning the shortfall of CPA in the United States continues, I think there's a good possibility that there could be opportunities beyond those 3 years. But let's look at it this way. Even let's suppose that it is not, they don't have the job opportunity here and they decide to go back to their own country, India or wherever, right? Having that and sitting for the CPA exam gives them a different qualification, gives them a unique qualification. Now, we also know that, all the big fours have large presence in India. Not only big fours, but a lot of the major firms have a big presence in India. So they still have potential opportunities back in India to continue to work on US clients or whatnot. So I don't think it's a bad move to continue to come here and get their degree, get their OPT if they want to, and by some chance that they can't stay here and they're having to go back to India, I think the opportunity still ends with that. Because let me tell you, CPA is a global standard. It's a globally recognized designation, right? And it's just not here in the United States. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the number one US CPA growth area outside of the United States is India. Okay, so they have the opportunity to work on US clients, but sitting in India. I think another area, Philippines. I think the Middle East as well. So the US CPA designation is well recognized throughout the globe. So they can't go wrong. They will not go wrong. They will have ample opportunity.
Thank you so much, Anup. I think Indian market and the Indian students who are planning to move to the US, I think that is a message you need to read out from Anup. Yes, there are a lot of opportunities, but if you're a CPA, I think the opportunity kind of goes up by 200%. Like how the stock, once it crosses certain revenue or profit metrics, it kind of outperforms. And I think the similar logic is in your career also. If you don't have a CPA and you're moving to the US, really doesn't make any sense, because I think CPA is the qualification which you need to target, then work for a couple of years and then make a move where you want to work. Because I think experience plus qualification, US always welcomes it. And I think Anup, the answer by you kind of resonates with this particular thing as well. So thank you so much. It was amazing to have you here. An outstanding communication and conversation. And I think these answers will really help students to kind of solve their questions as well. And one final question: will AICPA is planning to reduce their fees, or how is it like? Anup?
What did they say? What's the term? That's way above my pay grade. No, I'm just kidding. I think it is something worthwhile discussing. It really is, because different markets have different things, especially with the growth of the CPA in India and other locations, as I said, Philippines, Middle East. I think you have to look at the markets and what the market will bear, and what's reasonable in that market. And I think that that is something that I know the AICPA is looking at, because I brought it up. I know that. So we'll see where it goes.
Thank you so much, Anup. This should be a great news if this gets implemented soon. But thank you so much, Anup. It was great having you here. And one more thing before Anup leaves, I've seen Anup also operating a karate school for over 35 years. Is a 7-degree master black belt in Kwando and has been teaching martial arts as well. So Anup, I think you have amazing diversity actually. So there's a lot of talk about diversity and inclusion, and I think Anup is a fantastic example of that. Thank you so much,
But
Anup.
thank you very much. But I can tell you that all of those things have helped me to become the person I am. Martial arts, the CPA, and the years of experience and being around rocket scientists, all of those things have really helped me to become the person I am. So I'm very fortunate, and I really appreciate you taking the time to have me on your show. And good luck to you, and best of luck to all your students.
Thank you so much, Anup. Thank you, everyone.